Reactive Training Systems.
So it's been a little while since my podcast with Dr. Mike T. Nelson, where we discussed HRV and fatigue in some depth. And as I mentioned in the podcast, this is a topic that seems to be kind of at the forefront of my mind right now. It's something that I'm kind of obsessing over a little bit, is how do you optimize a training process to best manage fatigue and recovery, fluctuations in fatigue and recovery rates, and things of that nature. I'm aware of how I deal with it currently, which seems to be certainly a good enough solution for most cases most of the time. And I think that's how most coaches handle it, but that's never been an answer that I'm entirely satisfied with giving. Especially, some of my athletes have schedules that shift around a lot, so their recovery rate changes quite a bit. And I found myself in this situation recently as well. So it's one of those things where if you examine the way that weekly templates are set up, the structure of a training week is kind of it's not an optimization. It's just it's a concession, really. It's one of these situations where we accept just the realities of the situation that we're dealing with, which is fine. That's fine enough. I think the problem comes into play. The problem comes into play more when you're dealing with higher level lifters, or lifters who are more interested in optimizing their performance and not just settle for a good enough solution. And I think that good enough solution has some bigger gaps when you introduce a bit more chaos. So if your life is set up in a way where you live a fairly routine life, you go to work at the same time, you come home at the same time, you go to sleep at the same time, you eat generally the same things, and you do all those recovery things that we're supposed to do, and all that stuff happens on a regular schedule, then it makes sense that a weekly template can be roughly optimized for that, because your life is routine. So a training schedule that is also routine can be, it can generate a pretty good fit. But what if recovery fluctuates? Of course, there's the things that we do that affect recovery. We always talk about sleep and nutrition and things like that. Those things all affect recovery. But what if recovery fluctuates even outside of that? I just get this feeling that it does, and I don't know if that's correct or not, and I don't even really know how to tell if it's correct if we can't first get a good measure of what recovery or fatigue even really is. And I think that's where HRV comes into play. It's got potential as being some way to monitor your recovery or your fatigue. But it's such a good example, I think, because it's well established that things like your breathing pattern, whether you take a shower or don't, things like that can affect your HRV score. And if all these little things affect your HRV score in ways that we don't think are really affecting your actual fatigue and recovery, I think it's a good metaphor for how it works, that fatigue is difficult to track. It's difficult to get a handle on, So if you can't get a handle on what it even is really, how are you going to optimize it? And then even if you can optimize it, what are you going to do with that information? I mean, these are questions I don't really have great answers for. I just know that it's stuck in my head right now to try to figure this out. And so I'm chipping away at it, answering some questions now and then about it, thinking about it. And who knows where that will go. Maybe we'll have to do a project. Maybe we'll just figure something out. We've got our track system, because I know that this is something that will come up. We've got our track system, and I think that does a pretty good job. In fact, the more I look at it, the more I guess I'm pleased with the way that the track system is constructed, that I think it does do a really good job of monitoring an athlete's recovery in the ways that we care about as powerlifting coaches. However, I don't really bang the drum on track that much, because I'm always interested in and in search of some changes or tweaks that we could make to it to make it a better system. So I have some things in mind. I mean, hopefully we'll get to those sooner rather than later, but you never know with such things. But in the meantime, I mean, it's a system that exists, and like I said, I think the more I think about it, the more I feel like it's doing a good job of telling me as a coach what's going on with my athletes. So kind of a lot of rambling here. I guess you can kind of take this as just organizing my thoughts about fatigue in some way. If there is anyone that you think I should talk to about this, someone who's got some really insightful views on fatigue management and things like that, and things that go more toward optimization. Think high-level athletes and not just, covering the basics, covering your good enough solutions and things like that. If there's anyone who kind of comes to mind when you start thinking about that, you think I should talk to them, please let me know, and maybe I can have them on for a podcast or something like that. I would certainly like to continue my work on this topic, because it's like a song that's stuck in my head. It's going to stay in there until I can finish the song. So thanks for watching.
Reactive training systems.